What is going on, everybody? It is the legendary LaShawn here, and I'm back at you again with another video. And I just this is kind of like a little think piece that I just had a little while ago, maybe a couple days. I watched this video by Brian F where he was talking about the cycle of hate that kind of goes around Street Fighter. And it was a really interesting video. Has some really good points in there. A lot of them that I think that for the most part, I pretty much agreed with, He talked about the fact that, first off, it's pretty much a cycle that goes on with the Street Fighter hate. He said that, people are using the beta and the gameplay of Street Fighter 6, the things that people are finding out about the system and everything else to kind of take a big dump on Street Fighter 5 and talk about how Street Fighter 6 is going to be like the savior of the Street Fighter series and the fighting games and everything else. And that, people are kind of setting themselves up for disappointment, and that this is kind of the same exact thing that was set up when Street Fighter 5 was coming out, that a lot of people were complaining profusely about Street Fighter 4, right? And complaining that the vortex was too crazy, saying that Street Fighter 5 was going to return Street Fighter to more of the footsies type of game and everything like that. And that Street Fighter 5 was pretty much going to be the same situation, that it was like going to be the savior, right? And again, a lot of the points I definitely do agree with, but one thing that I definitely don't, I think that objectively when you look at it, Street Fighter 6, definitely is Capcom's most ambitious fighting game, but also it's, even so far, from what we've played, this is like one of, if not the most highest quality Street Fighters, right? And why do I think that? And I will definitely say that I think that Brian F kind of has things a little bit skewed, and especially with him viewing things from like a pro player standpoint, is missing out on a lot of the little things that definitively make Street Fighter 6, even on release, and even from what we know so far, makes it a way better experience than the Street Fighter game that we have today, being Street Fighter 5 Arcade Edition. Even with this final patch and with everything being done, Street Fighter 6 is like just shaping up to be a much better game, just overall wise than Street Fighter 5. But why is that, right? Why is Street Fighter 6 possibly going to be the savior of Street Fighter and maybe fighting games, right? Well, one thing for sure that really stuck out to me was the visuals. I remember when we first found out that Capcom was kind of going to go into their RE engine, and they were going to use that to be able to, make their games and to be able to make them look a little bit more realistic, but not too realistic. A lot of people were thinking about Resident Evil and how weird things look in that game, and they were like, oh my god, Street Fighter is going to look like nightmare fuel, because the RE engine works very, very beautiful. And I thought that RE engine, I thought they were literally just calling it the Resident Evil engine and everything. And I'm probably sure that a lot of people were also thinking that, which is why they were just like, how in the heck are they going to try to use a freaking Resident Evil engine to try to make a fighting game, right? But when we saw that first trailer, it was looking pretty clean, at least in my opinion. There were some people that really wasn't feeling Luke's look in the, that first little teaser that they had. But Ryu, he was looking like kind of wide and stuff, but you couldn't really see him too much. But once we got that full trailer for Street Fighter 6, oh man, people were singing the praises of how beautiful it looked, right? And now let's compare that with Street Fighter 5. Even when Street Fighter 5 was getting revealed at, at like, not EVO, but like when it was on like, the show floors of like E3 and stuff like that, when people got a chance to play it, even with the betas and stuff that came out, a lot of people were saying that the visual, there didn't really seem to be much visual improvements from Street Fighter 4 to Street Fighter 5. The most interesting thing is that, in my opinion, I thought that Street Fighter 4 looked way better than Street Fighter 5. To me, Street Fighter 5, the characters have like this weird kind of almost like a clay look to them. It looks like they were made like out of like these clay figurines. Like it doesn't really look very clean to me. It doesn't really look that enjoyable to look at. As opposed to Street Fighter 4, I was a big fan of the ink and the way that they used that and incorporated that into the focus and everything. I thought that was so dope and gave it such a kind of like a nice little like samurai look to it, which was so dope. Even the little things of like the characters that they chose to put in there was amazing, even though not everybody was on board with it, right? But the visuals of Street Fighter V didn't really look all that appetizing to people. And with Street Fighter 6, I mean, the game looks amazing. Even from simple things like characters' models. If you go online right now, I mean, everybody just looks fantastic. The way that the characters are animated, all the little movements, like things look so fluid. I was even looking at the way that Chun moves when she does like normal into her stance and then her different combo paths and everything else. It is so great. Like it is so fluid and you can see the amount of detail that was put into it. And it very clearly shows, right? And so another reason, in my opinion, is content. Even again, just from what we have from trailers and everything else, from what we've been seeing, we've never seen this amount of content in a Street Fighter game before. Heck, I mean, I would say even a fighting game, period. Like, of course, you got Soul Calibur where you can create your own character and you can go into arcade mode and stuff like that. You have other games where you can create your own character. You have other games where, you know, you have kind of like a lobby system where people can walk around at and everything else in fighting games. That's nothing new, right? But the amount of content that it's having and the amount of depth where you can create your own character, it's like they fuse the very best parts of like, almost like, I don't know, almost like Tekken and Soul Calibur, and they just fused it together by being able to make your own character. And on top of that, with World Tour mode, you're going to be learning different moves from different masters. And so with that, that means that you have a chance to put a sonic boom with the Shoryuken. You have a chance to put a spinning bird kick with, like, you know, Kimberly's little Bushinryu style and everything like that, which gives a lot of individuality to the players. And that hasn't existed in a Street Fighter game up until this one, right? And so even for something like that, you know, casuals are really going to care about it. Like, that's going to be the thing for casuals, right? And again, I'm talking about objectively. If you get salty, because Brian F. talked about, like, you know, players getting salty a lot, hitting the wall. Well, if you get salty, then you can go into World Tour mode and you can just play the story mode. You could just play the story mode, create your own character, and see what kind of stuff that you missed in the world, right? Because we don't know exactly what the story is going to be. They haven't pieced it all together. I would assume that getting into this new year, Capcom confirmed that they're going to use Udon, the person that did the Street Fighter comics before, to kind of roll out the prequels for Street Fighter 6 so that we can know what's going on. They said that the situation with Ken is going to be revealed in that comic as to why he's basically on the run. And so they're going to be using that to reveal a little bit more, and hopefully we'll be able to piece together what's going on with the story from that. But even if the story is simple, super simple, like, okay, go around, learn some moves from certain masters, and then, like, you know, go take on JP or whoever's going to be the bad guy. Because from what I've seen so far, it seems like they haven't totally confirmed that JP is the villain. From what we saw in the trailer talked about he had an obsession with finding a worthy successor, right? That was kind of like his whole entire purpose for being in this story. And they haven't confirmed whether or not it's Psycho Power, but I'll do that in another video because my mind has me going with like what JP's purpose is going to be, right? Dang, I kind of forgot what I was saying now. But okay, so as far as World Tour, World Tour is going to be a content goldmine, and even if you get through the story and you beat it, well, there's different types of mix and matching of character special moves that you haven't done before, And we see that there's certain collectibles that you can get from destroying barrels, from being able to teleport to different areas. So it looks like there's going to be things that you can collect. It might be concept art or whatever else, but there's probably going to be stuff that you miss. So if you're feeling salty, if you hit that wall, the same wall that Brian F was talking about, just take a break. Go over to World Tour mode, and they did World Tour mode so amazingly where they're showing you in little mini games how to be able to charge, how to be able to do quarter circles by having that whole entire buffet food plate thing right there, showing you how to do quarter circles and half circles and, you know, full circles and all that other stuff, where now it seems like they're investing into their player base. Street Fighter V does not feel like a game where they're investing into their player base. It feels like they have so much focus on kind of like the esports and how they want the esports to go that they totally neglected the kind of community and the fun aspect of the game. And that's my main problem with Street Fighter V, is that after a certain point, it just doesn't feel fun because it's not that engaging to me, right? And that's something that really needs to be highlighted with Street Fighter 6. That focus to community, it's very clear that they are really focused on growing a community, more so than any other game, right? Of course, all games, like, you know, have different tutorials, they tell you how to play. But the mini games that they're trying to get into to show you how to charge, to show you how to do quarter circles, to show you how to be able to, like, you know, hit, like, you know, things at a certain height and everything else. I've always been a fan of that. Like, even with Street Fighter, what was it? With Street Fighter 1, I think you had the thing where you could break the, what was it? You had to break the boards. With Street Fighter, what was that? With Street Fighter 2, oh no, I'm sorry, with, like, you know, the other Street Fighter games, you had like the barrels, you would destroy the car and stuff in Street Fighter 2 and everything. And so you had different ways to be able to teach you how to play the game. And I've always been a huge fan of that. Like, I've always thought that that was one of the smartest things that Capcom did with their game, was have these little mini games that teaches the casuals little things about how the game is supposed to be played, so that they're really invested into getting better, right? Even when you look at the genius of taking a game like Street Fighter, but incorporating it with the way that ArcSys does things with having a whole lobby system, that is amazing. That is so smart. And the reason why is because, especially with the second beta, you can have different lobbies. And I don't know if you can create your own lobby, if you can like make like a little community or whatever else, but you can literally have your, like, you know, your lobby just for casuals. You have your lobby for the pros. You could have your lobby for, like, you know, tournament goers and people that need to train for tournaments and stuff like that. So then that way each community can kind of flourish in their own space and not be interrupted. They did a wonderful job, at least to me, with the leveling system. As far as like the rookie and everything else, they put some really nice parameters on how it works, and there being different stars to like each level, and asking you in the beginning, where is your level at? Are you intermediate? Are you proficient? Are you a pro? Like, do you not know how to play? Are you a novice and all that stuff? It's very clear that they're actually trying to be invested into both the pros and the casuals. And that's something that Street Fighter V just does not have, right? And then there is the cream, the frosting on top with the cherry, the cream of the crop, which is the system.
You win.
Even at this point, even, you know, at this point of, what is this, December 29th, 2022, almost getting into the New Year's, Street Fighter V, it's a cool game. But I've always felt like, especially, well, I shouldn't say always, I felt like this is where Street Fighter V was supposed to start. Like, Street Fighter V, of course, objectively started horrible. There was no arcade mode. The online was horrible. There were 6 frames of lag. You know, PC players had a horrible time playing PS4 players. There would always be a crazy delay. They didn't tell you what the delay was so that you know how to be able to adjust. All of that stuff is, at least from what we've played so far, I'll just say what we played so far, it seems like there's been a lot of attention to the online functionality of Street Fighter 6. There seems to be way more focus on, let's make sure that this thing works with a good amount of people and If the connection is bad, let's make it to where both people can choose to leave the match if they want to. Now, of course, both people have to hold down the start button, and then so in that way you can get the no contest and everything, right? But there's the option. It shows that they really have care and the attention to detail to the online quality of people that are playing the game, right? And then it's like, okay, even if both people don't disconnect from the game or whatever else, you can look at the very top of the screen to be able to see what the lag is looking like, what the ping is looking like. So then that way you have some type of idea of how to adjust to it, right? And then even going into the actual drive system, the drive system offers a level of individuality, a level of freedom that hasn't been in like Street Fighter since Street Fighter 4. You know what I'm saying? With the V system, it's been my opinion that the V system has always been flawed. And it just was not a good idea from the inception, right? If you look at other Street Fighter games, every Street Fighter game, except for Street Fighter 5, when it comes to like a system that's like in a game, normally the characters are kind of on equal footing. This is what I mean, right? Street Fighter 4, the beginning of Street Fighter 4, everybody had a focus. Now, everybody's focus went different distances, and you know, different players had different things they could do to be able to combo off a focus and all that different stuff. But in the beginning, everybody had a focus. Everybody had a focus. It had one hit of armor. There were certain moves. Every character had a move that broke focus, right? If you go back to Street Fighter 3, everybody had a parry, right? And then if you talk about Third Strike, everybody had 3 supers that they could choose from, that they could choose to see how they wanted to work their character. Street Fighter Alpha, you had the different isms. Everybody had a different ism, and it applied differently to each character, but everybody had access to the same isms. You know, even if you want to go back to, heck, Street Fighter 2, everybody had some type of super, right? Now, of course, the characters had their own depth to them, which made the matchup and made you had to pay attention to how to play the matchup. But when it came to a system that was supposed to be in the game, everybody was able to access that system, able to use it, and pretty much on equal footing on how to use it. On Street Fighter V, that's not the case. Now, yes, everybody has a V skill. Everybody has a V trigger. Everybody has a V shift, right? But for the longest time, certain characters had a V reversal, like, you know, they had a V reversal or a V trigger that wasn't really valuable, one. And then they had a V reversal. It's supposed to be a move that could get the opponent off you because this game was so intent on focusing on offense and focusing on just keep on going in, keep on going crazier and crazier and crazier, try to melt your opponent's brain, that there was only really one defensive mechanic, and that was V reversal. But the problem with V reversal is not everybody's V reversal gave a knockdown. The other problem is certain characters had a V reversal that could be reacted to and punished when other characters did not. And for the longest time, and I will say even up to today, the V system is just very flawed. It's not good. It's not good at all. The biggest problem with the V system, in my opinion, is V trigger. And this is why, right? I think that V trigger shows what's really wrong with this game, because when you get into V trigger, I love Maximilian. Maximilian said this so cool. V trigger always, and he said V trigger always feels like this is how my character should be. My character should be doing all this crazy stuff. It should already be the game. And each character should have their own crazy thing that just makes them fun. But because of the way that V trigger is set up, one, it's set up so it feels like, oh, I have to unlock my character's true form. I have to take damage to unlock my character's true form, right? And then it doesn't feel good for the other player because it's like, okay, I've been doing good. I've been hitting you with footsies, all this crazy, you know, I've been whiff punishing. You know, I jumped over fireballs appropriately. I read correctly. They cracked and all that stuff, right? But now, once they have V-Trigger, they could bring it back just like that. And especially if I'm at 50% health, if I'm at 75% health against Abigail, who knows what might happen? You might get into one combo and then you might be done, right? The other problem is with Street Fighter V, you get into certain situations where there is no answer to what you should do. There's no answer on how to be able to deal with the character's crazy, kooky stuff. You just have to sit there and you have to guess and you have to take it. And a lot of times that calls into question whether the person really deserved to win that match. And not because, like, I'm not trying to be like, oh, well, you know, it doesn't take skill to use V-Trigger, or, you know, it doesn't take skill to win in Street Fighter V. It definitely does. As a matter of fact, I would argue that Street Fighter V is one of the most training-focused Street Fighters that there has been. Because especially with the way the frame data works in this game, if you want to go like pro level, I'm talking like up there with Daigo, up there with Punk and all those people, you have to know the frame data. There is no ifs, ands, and buts about it, and there's not much... There's not really much room for players that play with their heart, right? For players that just are trying to play against the opponent. They're not trying to play against the character. They're trying to read their opponent. Again, there is still, you know, some of that in here, but a lot of the focus is on knowing the frame data. Do you know your frame data? Do you know when to press a button? Do you know the gimmicks, the setups, all of this different stuff? And a lot of times, especially not just for casuals, but also for pro players, after a while, that gets kind of boring because it boxes the game into only being a specific thing. You choose your V trigger, you choose your V skill, and then this is how you have to play the character. You know, let me preface this by saying I started playing Street Fighter in Street Fighter Alpha 3, right? And in that game, you had a bunch of different isms. I got into Cody. He was my favorite character, really fun. And then I got into Street Fighter 4. When Street Fighter 4 came out, Cody wasn't there yet. So I started to play Ryu. I really like how strong he felt. You could do like all this like really cool combos and everything else. And then what is it called? And you know, the focus and everything. And then Super came out and I had my character back. And yo, he had the same moves, but also enhanced. And then he had Zonk Knuckle. So in Street Fighter 4, fireballs were really good zoning tools, right? And so Cody, with his Zonk Knuckle, was able to get invincibility on his Zonk Knuckle for, I think it was like the middle frames of the Zonk were invincible. And then, what was it? EX was like fully invincible, right? And so when you're playing against a Ryu and they're trying to zone you out, waiting for you to jump, I could go through fireballs with my Zonk Knuckle. And then, if I wanted to, I could also just break the fireball by doing the criminal upper, if I wanted to. In Street Fighter V, all of that got taken away. All of it got taken away. And I understand why as far as the Zonk Knuckle, because in Street Fighter V, fireballs aren't really the best. They're not really that strong because, again, a lot of times when you're zoning somebody, that's more of a defensive thing. And in Street Fighter V, they really, really want you to be offensive, right? So I took away the strength of the fireball, so that means that Cody can't have a Zonk, an ability that moves him forward and is invincible to fireballs. Okay. All right, I understand that. But then they took away criminal upper. And it's like, well, why? That was for my combos. And like I said, yeah, sure, you could use criminal upper to be able to defuse the fireball, but it's like that's normally not what it's used for. Normally people use it in combos, right? And so they took that away from him. And then they made his normals, a lot of his normals was really stubby. And then they kind of made his, what is it called? His ruffian kick not go as far and not have the same type of properties. And so my character felt dry for a moment. Then he had this V scale, which was a kick, a double-sided kick that was good as an anti-air, and you could actually use it as a DP, but it gave you gray life. And it's like, well, why would you do that? You took so much away from him. And then I was like, okay, well, you know what? Cody had a really cool Ultra. Both of his Ultras were really cool in Street Fighter 4. His first one went into this like really nice brawl thing where he punched you a bunch of times. Then he did this really big criminal umper. And then his second one, he would kick dust in your face. He would launch you into the air with this giant metal pipe. And then he would basically play baseball and just hit you into the outfield, right? Super duper dope. And then what do they do in Street Fighter 5? They give him a big tornado, a big criminal upper. Not a bunch of hits or flurries into criminal upper, no. Just a criminal upper. That's it. Cody is supposed to be like a brawler, super duper flashy, like I'm here to fight, fighting is the only thing that excites me character, right? And this is Cody's this is his redemption arc. He's mayor, he's the mayor of Metro City now. And now all he does is throw tornadoes? Like, that's not fun, that's not engaging, especially when you come from a game where he could do all of this amazing stuff that visually look cool. And again, even the game period, the hits lack weight to them. They lack weight. They feel so light and feathery. There's a lot of stuff that just doesn't have the type of impact that is needed. And in Street Fighter 6, when you get hit with something, you feel it. It doesn't matter, and it has different variations. Like the lights have some nice stun to them, but the heavies, you feel that joint. Like characters are reeling from those heavy hits, and it makes you very engaged into what's going on. And Street Fighter 5 just does not have that. And so the V system, it's just not, it just hasn't held up very well. It hasn't held up very well. And it really boxes players into playing one specific way. With the drive system opens up so much. It's completely your choice of what you want to do, and it gives you freedom. It engages you, and it makes you really think about what do you want to do. And there's multiple right answers. If somebody is doing or trying to hit you with a drive impact, you could parry. You could try to drive impact them back. You could neutral jump. You could try to grab them out of it if they're just doing it wrong. Like, there's so many answers. In Street Fighter 5, there's certain situations that you get into where it's like, oh, well, it's your fault for being in the situation in the first place, so you got to get punished for it. And you just got to hold this and pray that you guess right and do the right thing. And it's like, but I did all these low forwards. I've been punishing this guy. I've been whiff punishing. I've been doing all this stuff. It's like, oh well, they had V trigger unlocked, so you have to wait your turn to basically really get in there. And on top of that, you have to guess right. You could try to do your V shift, and now they do have V shift. They, I'm not even sure if they fixed those V reversals that needed to be fixed, right? But you do have V-Shift, but it's like the V-Shift takes away your bar. So now you might not get V-Trigger. So now the other character has access to their V-Trigger, but now you won't, and you might really need that. With Drive, everybody starts off with the same amount of Drive. Everybody starts off with the same exact tools, and it's your choice on how you want to use them. And that's something for, I think, both casuals and pro players. For the long term, it's not really fun. Like, Drive opens up so many combo paths of, what you want to do, especially with Drive Rush, where it changes your frame data. So it's like, yeah, you could go into practice and know that frame data, but the frame data changes up if they do a Drive Rush. So now if they're doing a button into Drive Rush into another button, you have to, you could train for that, but that's a lot of different scenarios to train for. And again, it forces you to really understand the mind of the player, not just the character, because the characters each have their own fancy gimmick that makes it to where the player has to choose how they want to play this character. You're not forced into a box of how to play them. You have to choose what you want to do. I played so many Jamies online that never used this dive kick. I played so many Jamies online, and again, I was in Diamond. And I was playing so many Jamies that didn't know that his jumping heavy kick comboed into his EX, into any of the dive kick. It comboed into the dive kick, and then once you got EX dive kick, it rolled them on the ground to where you can get an EX DP. There were so many people that did not know that, right? And so what I want to do is comment in the section below. Let me know what you guys think, right? Because it could just be a honeymoon phase. Brian F. could be right. It could just be a honeymoon phase. But from what I'm seeing so much, and from the positivity that I'm seeing from players, again, like I said in a previous video, who aren't even Street Fighter players. People were coming over for Tekken just like, yo, I can't wait for Tekken 8, but this game is going to be lit. Like, I'm gonna have to put time into both of these games. I'm gonna have to, because this game is really, really solid. When you have players from other games coming in talking about how dope this game is, that didn't really happen with Street Fighter V. Like, there was people that came in, you know, Sonic Fox tried to come and do his thing and everything else, but there wasn't this overwhelming surge of people, you know, being positive about the game. And again, as it went on, it got a little bit better because of the characters that they added, but it's like, if you don't play those characters, if you don't play Oro, if you don't play Manad, if you don't play Rose, if you don't play G, if you know, if you don't play Luke, then you're not getting access to, you know, those different combo paths and a little bit of that individuality that they put into those few characters. So that's pretty much it for me. I was just thinking about that because, you know, I really enjoyed Brian Nell's video, but I definitely thought that from an objective standpoint, and fighting game-wise, there hasn't been a fighting game that I think that has been this ambitious as far as content and everything else. I don't think that there has been, and I'm really trying to think. If anybody knows, put it in the description box below. But I really don't think that there's been a fighting game that's just that ambitious. And there definitely hasn't been a Street Fighter game that has been this ambitious with everything that it's doing. With the single player content, the multiplayer content, the focus on community growth. It hasn't been this in a long time. So tell me what you guys think. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, then please hit that like button. Definitely share the video with other FGC members so that we can get a nice little conversation started in the FGC. Get some different opinions in here. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys